Welcome to Monday Morning Methane. Today I'm joined by Tatiana Kunberg. And Tatiana, when we first met, you were with International Gas Union as Director of Strategic Communications. Now you're focusing on your own business and you help organizations build narratives, deliver those narratives. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Really happy to be here. Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks to all of your audience for joining us here as well this morning.
Great. So I don't know if you've been watching the news for the past 5 years at all, but it's been a pretty volatile global environment. Energy transition is lots of ups and downs. Obviously, security, energy security is on everyone's mind, affordability, and then there's this thing called decarbonization and energy transition that kind of takes backseat sometimes. Methane emissions has been an important topic in your work and in our work and sustainability reporting. Do you think these topics in the last couple of years have started to take more of a back seat given all of the volatility that we've seen, or do you think that they're more important than ever?
Awesome question. Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, I have been watching the news a little over the past 5 years. It has been somewhat keeping me not bored, as I like to say, in the world of energy and global gas and sort of communications. Um, I wouldn't say that it's taking a back seat, but I think it's important to recognize that the level of uncertainty is truly remarkable and sort of unprecedented, from geopolitical risks to technological developments to economies, societal sort of pressures, and all of these things that are happening at a very fast pace as well, which is also something that's new. It's the rate of that sort of volatility has been also unprecedented, for the lack of a better word. So I think that means that sustainability and things like methane emissions reporting and management are now having to compete a lot more with other priorities for businesses, because businesses are facing these sort of challenging environments where they have to be responsive and reactive in their strategy. And I do think it's important to recognize that sustainability sort of has lost some of its crown that it used to wear before at least 2022, when we kind of entered into the major global energy crisis. So that said, I think it's more important than ever in a way as well. But it's now a balancing act for businesses. It feels like having to find a way to integrate it into the broader business strategy. It's not a sort of an add-on that can be nicely happening on its own. There are other priorities that are really important. Decarbonization is one of them, but so is energy security now, and affordability is very much top of mind everywhere around the world. So it's become more challenging in that sense, competing for resources, but it still is ever more important, I think, as climate change is very much becoming more and more visible as well. So, people are sensing that, and that pressure is going to still continue to be there, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, I remember when we started Highwood, companies, climate tech companies were raising $50 million, $100 million at kind of an early stage. Energy companies were making, net zero promises without batting an eye, and everybody was really excited about energy transition. Now we have budget pressures, and as you mentioned, lots of uncertainty, different forms of uncertainty. And so I think maybe companies are starting to struggle to see the value of investing in methane management now compared to in the past. And some are potentially taking the strategy of waiting until there's a little bit more clarity in where things might be going, what investors are asking for, what buyers are interested in, what international regulations look like, and how international commerce evolves in energy. And so a question is, I guess, do you think there's still an advantage to being proactive when it comes to positioning your organization, proactive around emissions management?
I think so. I do really think so. You make all the points that you make are very fair and relevant. And it's understandable that, on the regulatory side as well, we've seen quite a lot of volatility, especially in certain parts of the world, the US being one good example. I do think that it's a strategic positioning win to be more proactive in this space. And I know the gas industry quite well from that angle. I used to do strategic communications for the International Gas Union, so I used to speak about this on the industry's behalf a lot. And I think that there are three reasons, I'd say, why this is strategically a smart long term play. One being the sheer, so in terms of methane emissions, in the context of global energy sector emissions, it actually could be seen as not so much in the gas value chain, for example. But for the gas industry itself and for the product itself, methane emissions really is the biggest opportunity to further improve the environmental value and the credentials of gas in the energy transition, because that's sort of the biggest part of the operational emissions profile. So that certainly is an important strategic positioning play. With that as well, number two is that we're kind of coming into a period where the abundance of supply of gas in the market is about to somewhat significantly increase over the next 3 to 5 years. So it's I would imagine going to get a lot more competitive. And so, I mean, there is competition on price will likely become challenging in some places. And this is one of the very pragmatic differentiation strategies, which I think a lot of companies are realizing, and that's why they are being proactive around this space. And we know that European Union, which is one of the biggest buyers of LNG, for example, in the market, in the international gas market, there is a rule coming in on the regulatory side. There is pressure, and thirdly, it's also, I think, because this is a new space in terms of governance and regulatory and standard development, it probably gives a bit of an advantage, or I'd say a lot of an advantage, to be in the space in the zone of sort of in the first, not first adopters, but early adopters, let's say, and have an opportunity to contribute to the way that the standards are shaping up, rather than waiting to see what happens and then being on the back foot on sort of across all of these three, I'd say, pillars of strategically positioning the product as in the long-term energy transition. And probably actually I throw in the fourth, as gas is becoming a bigger part of the energy mix globally. It's been gradually replacing some of the coal, helping to reduce emissions there. It is the lowest emission fossil fuel. But with that happening, the share of the emissions from gas contributing to the sort of global energy emissions is going to grow and become more noticeable. So again, methane emissions are that lever that provides a very big opportunity to continue to improve the way that gas performs on the emissions profile versus other fuels, and that continues to be important, I think.
I really like the point you make about how projected oversupply could lead to an environment where gas producers are competing over um, elements like environmental attributes or environmental performance, and in that enabling buyers in that world to be a little bit more selective about low methane gas or the region that they're sourcing the product from. I think everyone acknowledges that methane is, quote unquote, the overused term is low hanging fruit. But there's still kind of challenges around talking about methane emissions such that we're kind of speaking the same language, building trust between industry and consumers, or industry and society, industry and investors. Why is it so hard? Why do these challenges still exist?
Good question. Well, first of all, let me just quickly, I wouldn't characterize what's coming as an oversupply necessarily, but I might be biased in that regard. There's still a lot of coal in the system and a lot of very willing buyers who are very price sensitive. So abundance is coming for sure with its implications on price, and that will have its buyer. Um, and also say similar kind of in terms of the low hanging fruit of methane emissions. I think Thomas, you would kind of be sensitive to that. It's not always, it really depends how low hanging of a fruit it is. So there is that narrative out there that it's such a low hanging fruit and it's just, a no-brainer to address, which sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Really depends on how far along the chain the industry or the player is in making progress already. But going back to the question of why it's so hard to talk about, it's very complicated. It's a very complex topic. It's a very technical topic. And I think that maybe when you're inside the industry, and I think I was guilty of this as well before, so much nuance about it. It's just so complex that it's very hard to simplify it down to a framework that resonates with a wider audience. That's one issue. The other issue is we know that because it's so complex and it is so nuanced, and there are so many still imperfections about how the data is to be interpreted, how it is to be measured, how the quantifications are to be done. And sort of that science is still kind of ongoing, and there's still a lot of debate around that. So the industry is very, for good reasons, conscious about going out, I guess, with concrete numbers until they're absolutely sure sometimes. But that being said, that is also at the same time, its complexity is the reason why it's absolutely necessary to figure out a way to come up with such frameworks and such simplification of the message. Because at the same time as the industry maybe is talking less about it, other actors are not shying away from talking about it. And we've got a lot of messaging and narrative being shaped by anti-fossil fuel activists or certain academics, etc. But what they have been able to accomplish is to come up with a very clear, simple, repeatable framework of framing the message that is understandable, that resonates with the wider public, and that they've been consistently saying through different channels in various ways. And that's the narrative that has now been dominant, and the industry often finds itself, I think, responding to that rather than providing its own version of the truth, or version of how to sort of interpret it in a simpler way. So that's why I think that's the challenge, that's the balance that needs to be struck.
Totally. So we have about 30 seconds left. Do you have one suggestion for the gas industry to help itself communicate better to the public around methane emissions?
Yes. So I think I was kind of saying this a bit throughout the, implicitly communicate, talk more. The key message I want to leave with, I think, is that trust and credibility is a long-term play. It's not something that can be built with a short-term campaign or a small sort of tactical exercise and then you go away. It's a seed you plant and then you water and then you watch grow and then you replant. And that's how you build that trust. It's over time. It's through investment. So communicate and find ways to talk about the great stories that there are, the successes and the great work that's happening in the industry to date, because I think it's not very well known and it's not very well covered. So I think there's a lot to talk about.
If you want to weigh in on this conversation, please add a comment for Tatiana. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you so much, Thomas.